Welcome to the Ice Guys, presented by the Hockey Podcast Network for Saturday, March 20th. Ian Cameron, and we've got a returning special guest with us, Ice King Betts. You can follow him on Twitter at that Twitter handle. He was with us a few weeks ago on a Sunday to break down the NHL card. He's back with us. We're hoping to have Alex B. Smith with us, but he's dealing with some headaches and and he has severe headaches when he has them. So unfortunately, it looks like he's going to be a no-go today, which is all the more reason I'm happy I got a special guest with me to at least join me to make it not a solo show. And it's Ice King Betts. Follow him on Twitter. Pete is his name. Welcome back. How are you doing? And looking forward to a Saturday card. How could you not? There's 14 games today.
Doing really well. Season's actually been treating me really well lately. I was expecting a little bit of kind of regression from kind of my picks from February, because we went on like an absolute tear in February, and the beginning of the month kind of struggled. But since then, we've really picked it up, and it's been going well. And we've got a absolutely massive card today, so a lot to go through.
Yeah, I remember the last time you were on, it was a shorter card, and you didn't like a whole lot. You were just some things I kind of like, but nothing I love. Well, there's a lot more to choose from today on this card. So let's get into it. We've got a bunch of afternoon games. We'll start with the Pittsburgh Penguins, New Jersey Devils. Pittsburgh minus 165, road favorites. Total 5.5 here, shaded to the over in this game. You've got the Pittsburgh Penguins looking to bounce back, losing to New Jersey the previous time they played the Devils, but they've got major concerns at the center ice position right now, Pittsburgh, coming into this game. For the longest time, we know they've won Stanley Cups, and they've been perennially a good hockey team because of their depth at the center ice position. And they could go 1, 2, 3, 4 down the middle and be able to match up and be better than you at that position. And all of a sudden now that's taken a hit with Evgeny Malkin's injury, Teddy Bluger sidelined as well. And Jared McCann was also a center that was injured for the Penguins, but looks like they're at least going to have him back. It looks like he's going to not only return, but slot in on that second line, playing between Brandon Tanev and Kasperi Kapanen, who's actually played quite well for the Penguins this year. So they get some bit of good news there in that regard. The New Jersey Devils had gone through a wretched stretch of hockey where they went 1-9 in 10 games, but they've now won 2 straight games. They beat the Buffalo Sabres. That wasn't saying much. But certainly beating Pittsburgh in their last game was definitely something a little bit more impressive from this Devils team. We'll have to see who they go with in terms of goaltending. Mackenzie Blackwood got injured in the pregame warm-up the last game. Scott Wedgwood had to come in, but boy, he played well. 40 saves the other night for the New Jersey Devils. And he's a veteran guy. He's come in there and played some good games in the past for this team. We'll see if that can continue. It looks like, they've started to get their power play going. They've scored in 3 straight games with the man advantage, which is good to see. The power play's been struggling. Really, the offense had been struggling without Hischier. That's definitely a key absence, but Jack Hughes is starting to get things going a little bit. We're seeing Miles Wood, Jesper Bratt, Pavel Zacha. Those are guys that early in the season were playing well for the Devils. They kind of tailed off. They're starting to come back again. So it's a really interesting game. I think from a spot perspective, you think Pittsburgh's going to be fired up to bounce back, but I don't like the price. I don't like the injuries in the center ice spot. So this is a pass for me. Do you have anything here with Penguins Devils?
Yeah, so I played New Jersey in their last game against Pittsburgh, and I'm actually playing them again. I just think the market's just not really reacting to a lot of what you mentioned with Pittsburgh. I just really don't think that this is a team that I want to be laying like more than minus 150 with right now. I think they have kind of some serious problems, and if you just go. Their record is overall is really good, but I just believe it's a little bit misleading. A lot of the advanced metrics that I'm looking at that we kind of talked about last time with, Corsi, expected goals, and all sorts of these things. The Penguins are pretty much hovering right around like an average to like even slightly below average team for like full season body of work. And they also just have a couple goaltenders that I really just don't trust at all. So I did lock in the Devils for 1 unit, just like a smaller play at plus 144. I was on them. I got them plus 165 the last game, which was a really nice one. But I figure if we back them, I think they're playing the Penguins about 4 times here. I'm thinking the Devils are at least going to win 2 of these matchups, and with getting such a plus money price, you're going to end up profitable backing them in these 4 games, just because I do think that this is more of a more of an even game than the market is suggesting, just based off like overall kind of statistical body of work. And, Blackwood's he hasn't been, I mean, he played really, really well to start the year. And then he kind of sputtered a little bit and hadn't been playing too well. And, Wedgwood has been just phenomenal somehow. So I don't have like really any kind of difference right now between anyone they throw out there. I mean, if Dell is in net, I think it's a smaller downgrade, but it still wouldn't be enough to convince me to not take a chance here with the Devils.
Yeah, and definitely value in the price is what you see. And when you see value in the price and then the line, that's when you make your bet for sure. Nashville taking on Florida. We've got Florida minus 210, minus 220, home favorites, 6 the total, shaded to the under in this one. What to make of these Nashville Predators here? I mean, I've been basically ripping this team all season. They've won a couple in a row now. They're heating up. They beat Tampa Bay, but they beat Tampa Bay with McElhinney in that day for the Lightning, and took advantage of that because McElhinney from Vasilevsky, it's a huge drop-off in my opinion, and it certainly showed that day. But I got to give Nashville credit, and I said this the other day with Alex and Jimmy. This is a team that early in the season, there's a bunch of stiffs that don't play well on this team. Arvidsson and Duchesne's now injured. Johansson's been a bust. He's been a no-show. Can't find him with a telescope on the ice. But now they're playing all these younger.
I'm losing here.
All right, I think we're back here.
Yeah, we're solid.
All right, we're good. We're good. Oh, wait a minute. The background changed, so we got to fix that. There we go.
Fast on the hardwood now.
There we go. And we got to get the logo. There we go. We're back.
All right.
All right. And we're still live. And I think we're still on. So we'll just pick it up. For the podcast to let it all this out. I'll tell them, once Pittsburgh, New Jersey analysis stops, we'll just start it up with Nashville, Florida when we get back to doing that, which we'll do right now. So let me just make sure we've got, everything's back. There we go. All right. Here we go. All right, next game, Nashville taking on Florida. We've got Florida minus 210 to minus 220 home favorites, total 6 shaded to the under in this game. I've been ripping on Nashville all season, and now lo and behold, here they are winning 2 games in a row. Although the first win was against Tampa with Curtis McElhinney in net. I think one of the biggest drop-offs you'll see is going from Andre Vasilevsky to Curtis McElhinney, and we certainly saw that in their last game. But beating Florida, I'll give them credit, and much to my chagrin, Pekka Rinne was not in net because I was thinking, let's fade Nashville here because Pekka Rinne is going to get a second start, and he never plays a good game after a really good start. He usually reverts back to Pekka Rinne that struggles. But lo and behold, UC Saros was the starter the other night against Florida, and he played quite well and led the Predators to a victory over the Panthers. And I've said all along that this team has had, Johansson's been terrible. They've had Victor Arvidsson hasn't shown up a lot of games. Duchesne's injured. A lot of their veteran players have been stiffs. But now all of a sudden, these last few games, they got a lot more younger players in the lineup. Yakov Trenin and this Eli Tolvanen, who has really been good for them. They've got a younger blue line with injuries to Ryan Ellis and Lucas Pisa, and of course Roman Josi, who's the big one. And all of a sudden they've got this youth movement, and I see they're playing with a little bit more speed. And actually, these guys I find are making more of an impact and playing a more noticeable game than some of these veteran players for Nashville. So all of these youngsters that are now in this lineup for the Predators, they're suddenly playing with spirit. They want to show the coaching staff, show the scouts that, hey, we can be NHL players and make an impact at this level. So I think that's actually played a part in the little mini win streak Nashville's had. Right. Problem is they're now going up against Florida for a second game, a Florida team that's been just nails off a loss. What are they now? I think 8-1 off a loss this year. They've been terrific at avoiding a losing streak. Drieger is going to be in net here for the Panthers. We don't know yet who the goalie is going to be for the Nashville Predators. I think Florida bounces back. I don't love the price by any stretch of the imagination, so I probably would go Florida puck line here, if anything, lay the goal and a half. Even the regulation line's like minus 150. That's not a price I'm interested in. If I bet Florida here, it would be the puck line here in this game, and I'd feel better about it if Rinne's in net. Saros, if he's in net, I might back off, but right now I lean Florida puck line. What are your thoughts here with this one, Nashville, Florida?
I guess I lean towards the Predators at the current price. I was on them their first game against Florida just because I had we got Saros back in net, and I thought the price was was pretty much the same thing as it is now, and I thought that was a little bit kind of outrageous just because the Predators have been playing a little bit better, and I just kind of liked the spot there, and I just think like statistically. Like I said, kind of before with kind of backing them, their 5-on-5 metrics are not really that bad. They're kind of just like an average team. They're not horrible. They just tend to really kind of, they had been like on like a special teams drought and just really struggling on like power play, PK, those kind of things. But in this game, I don't really want any part of them just because based off like kind of how the metrics were in that first game, Florida really dominated them across the board, and it was pretty much like a misleading final. I mean, if you look at it, I think the Predators really only had about 40% of the expected goals and about high 30s% of the Corsi. So the Panthers were dominating like the shots on goal, dominating the puck possession. It was just kind of like a weird result. So I do think Florida is going to they might crush them here. And my numbers are going to lean to Nashville, but I'm not going to go back to that and play them for like I think I'd be on them for like the 4th consecutive game, and I think they've gotten a little bit lucky just based off of how they've gotten those wins.
Yeah, Florida definitely puck. I'm leaning heavily toward Florida puck line, but I'm just waiting to see who Nashville's going to go with. Yeah, in net. That's the big question. Next up, we've got Minnesota, Colorado. Colorado minus 175 home favorites, total 5.5 shaded to the over. in this one. The Colorado Avalanche are looking as impressive as it gets right now. Remember, we were concerned about Colorado for a bit. Remember, they were struggling. They were not getting that secondary scoring, yet they were generating the chances. They were generating the opportunities. Numbers showed they probably should have been scoring more goals. They just weren't at the time. Puck wasn't going in. Hell, they had games against Arizona and LA. They've got 40 shots on goal in those games, getting chances, and yet they're barely squeaking by and having to win games in overtime or by the skin of their teeth. Well, things are changing now. We're seeing the Colorado Avalanche really get things going offensively. They beat up on Anaheim defensively in that comeback win they had against the Ducks. Really, they only gave up the bunch of goals they did to Anaheim because Hunter Miska is quite the drop off, clearly from Philip Grubauer in net for this Avalanche team, and they didn't really play well in front of him. Jared Bednar kind of said it after that game. We kind of hung. It wasn't all on Hunter Miska. They kind of hung him out to dry against Anaheim, but definitely this team is clicking on offense right now. The top line's been amazing, Rantanen, McKinnon, and Landeskog. But what's been good to see is that all of a sudden, they're starting to get the second line, the third line chipping in a little bit at the offensive end of the ice lately for the Colorado Avalanche. That's good to see. Minnesota, they lost, of course, decisively to Colorado in the first meeting just a couple nights ago. You look at them at home, they've been amazing. You look at them on the road when they've been asked to step up in class, play Colorado, play Vegas. They didn't win any of those games on the road. Like, they had a chance to beat Vegas. They had a 4-2 lead, coughed it up, and they ended up losing in overtime. And I said after that game, Minnesota's probably lost their chance to beat Vegas because, the Golden Knights will be a lot better from the start the next game, and they were. They beat Minnesota 5-1 in the rematch. Now, Minnesota did beat Vegas twice at home, but again, on the road, that ability to step up, beat a team the caliber of Colorado, I haven't seen it from this Minnesota team. They're going to go back to Capo Kakkonen in net tonight. Talbot was in net in the last, so I think it'll give them a better chance because Kakkonen's just been lights out. There's no question about that going into this game. So, to me, I think Minnesota at the price, I'm tempted, but I just don't know if I have any interest going against this Colorado machine right now. Like, they are looking as impressive statistically as they are on the ice right now, and it's not something I'm in a rush to step in front of. What's your take here, Minnesota, Colorado?
Yeah, I think Colorado is by far the best team in the league. I think my numbers have had them pretty much the number one team by a large margin for like the full season, just because, like you said, they weren't getting the goals, but they were creating just like absurd amounts of chances. And their core, I think their Corsi and expected goals numbers are tops in the league. Just overall, the entire team, and they passed the eye test. When you watch their games, they're just completely dominating. But with this price, I do think the Wild are worth just like a smaller play above like plus 150 against anybody, just because I do think like 5-on-5, the Wild tend to play right with everybody. They're a top team this year. I don't think anything would suggest that they're not. Obviously their road stats haven't been that great, but to be honest, I just think like getting plus 150 or more is something where I'm going to take a chance every single time. Their expected goal numbers, their high danger chances numbers, they've been really, really solid in terms of, limiting chances for the other team and, creating chances for themselves. And, I think the last game is maybe just like a little bit of an outlier for them. So I'm expecting them to, be a little bit more, motivated, kicking into gear a little bit today and be a lot more live in this game. And the other thing the Avs I'm a little bit concerned about is backup goaltending. Grubauer has been is going to have to take on some insane workload just because Miska has just been so bad for them. So Grubauer going again, he had to fill in, after one period when they started Miska against the Ducks, he had to come in for 2. He had to start the next game. He's just getting like some absurd workload right now. And I think the Avs, that's like the one thing that they're going to have to try to figure out is a secondary option in net, because Grubauer is going to be taking like an absolute, pounding if they keep on just throwing him out there every single game.
Yeah, no doubt. The good news is they don't allow a ton of shots, or at least this season so far they haven't. They've been good at keeping teams below 30 shots on goal, even a lot of games where they give up 20 shots or fewer. So that's the thing when you look at a goalie's workload. And I mentioned this the other day. Workload for a goalie, like in terms of how many games they play, good to look at that. but it's also good to also look at number of shots, number of chances faced each game, because that's going to be the difference. There's going to be some goalies that are just sitting back there 20 shots a game with the same number of games played. And then there's going to be some goalies that got to face 35, 40 shots a night. So they're going to be worn down even more. So that's definitely something I like to look at too with goalies. So if I'm concerned about fatigue, I also like looking at how many shots and chances they've faced, because you're not going to be as tired if you're not facing as many of those shots and chances. And that's the one thing about Grubauer is that the Colorado defense lately, they've kept the shot totals down, and Minnesota's going to have to keep the shot totals down today. You can't give up 55 shots on goal again and expect to win this game. But taking the chance though with Minnesota, I agree. I think the price is, tantalizing on the Wild. There is no question about that in this game today. We'll see if they can get the job done. Yeah, Terry Edelman, I know you're waving the Wild pom-poms in the chat. I did misspeak earlier. They did beat Colorado 6-2 early in the season, but Colorado was coming off the Vegas series. They had a couple injuries back then. Not giving Colorado total excuse for losing that game, but it was a tough spot. I remember that game very well. It was a tricky spot for Colorado, but credit to Minnesota taking advantage that day back in February when they beat the Avalanche here in Denver. Chicago and Tampa Bay. We've got Tampa Bay minus 250. Home favorites, total 6 across the board here in this one. Chicago Blackhawks ended up losing 4-2 to Tampa Bay the other night. Tampa Bay's really starting to get it cooking a little bit. No question. Chicago, on the other hand, it's been a really, really decent season for them. I guess you could say it's been better than we expected, but they're starting to come back down to earth a little bit. Chicago, they're starting to come back down to earth defensively is what I'm seeing, because early in the season, you look at all of these expected goals against and high danger chances, like they were still pretty bad.
Yeah, they're bad
in both of those categories, and yet it wasn't equating to the goals they were allowing. Now it is. Now we're seeing Chicago, struggle defensively more and more. Maybe not quite as bad as they were last year or 2 years ago when they were just giving up 5-6 goals in every game, it seems. But they're getting closer and closer to that, bottom tier defensive team again after, I think, some of their goaltending, which couldn't, sustain itself. You had to think there's regression from Lankinen, in goal for the Blackhawks, and we've seen that kind of bit. Seen that a little bit. Malcolm Subban has played good in spurts, but he's not always a goalie that's consistent one game to the next. Jeremy Colleton talking about how this team had chances and didn't shoot the puck enough the other night against Tampa Bay. So I think you're going to see Chicago be more aggressive in that regard. Shoot the puck from anywhere, especially when you're playing a good goalie like Vasilevsky. You have to do that. I mean, you've got to try to hope for some traffic, some rebounds, some tip-ins, some deflections, and just shoot the puck and see what it gets you. See if you can get some loose change around the net. I think Tampa Bay offensively should be able to still do some damage here as well. So I'm going right back to this. I think I've been on Chicago Tampa Bay overs in some form, in pretty much each and every recent meeting between these two teams. And I'm going right back to it here. Chicago, Tampa Bay over 6 at around even money in this one. Pete, what's your take here? Lightning hosting the Blackhawks.
Yeah, the Lightning just over the past, 10, 15 games have really turned it on. Metrically, they've just been, they've been like a powerhouse in the last 10 games. Something that I hadn't actually, seen too. I mean, they have the shooter talent. So that's the thing with the Lightning is, they can really make up for a lot of the metrics just based off of like how good they are at shooting, and like their shooting talent is phenomenal. So like sometimes it's going to be deceiving with some of their expected goal numbers, but to be honest, their last 10, 15, I think they have 56.27% of the expected goal share in the last 10, 55% of the Corsi share. So they're just absolutely controlling games right now. And the Blackhawks, they were kind of a product of a lot of luck in the first kind of beginning of the season. Like you said, like their metrics weren't very good, but they were kind of making up for it with really, really good goaltending, which has kind of started to kind of, regress a little bit. So I really just think the Lightning are I would only look to the Lightning on like a puck line or regulation play, something like that, just because I just don't think that the Blackhawks are going to be able to sustain a lot of the results that they were getting early in the year based off of how they're playing. And like you said, a lot of goals are starting to fall against them, and Tampa Bay is playing much better. So I wouldn't be surprised if, Tampa Bay puts up, 4 or 5 alone today. So for your
one thing to be
really good.
Yeah, definitely. I like the over. And one thing that I'm going to like this over even more, Tampa Bay plays Florida tomorrow, back to back. And maybe McElhinney is in today and you save Vasilevsky for Florida, because that's the bigger game. The
Yeah, I
Florida
mean,
Panthers
I
tomorrow.
would
So watch
take
out
back
for that.
I would take back a lightning bet if I knew Vasilevsky wasn't starting. So we'll see on that. But like, if he's not, I think the over is an even. It's a phenomenal play then.
Yeah, and this is no disrespect to McElwain. He's had some decent games and decent seasons in the past in a backup role. Problem is, none of those games have been this season. He's really had a tough time. He's been fighting the puck a little bit. There's just if you have a clear-cut opportunity to beat him, like the elite goalies on a breakaway or an odd man rush, they can make a save or two. But every time McElwain's faced one of those, and we saw it in the Nashville game earlier this week, he's getting beaten. There was a breakaway there. I think a shorthanded breakaway on the shorthanded for Nashville. There's an opportunity that sometimes an elite goalie can make that save. McElwain didn't. So that's why I think there is definitely that drop off, and he's definitely struggled a little bit this season. And he might be in if indeed John Cooper decides to save Vasilevsky for the big showdown with Florida on Sunday. Next game. The rest of the games are at night, by the way. Flyers and Islanders. Islanders minus 130. Home favorites, total 5.5 shaded to the over. So I took the Flyers the other night against the Islanders, just one of those games where I said, you know what, they were so badly embarrassed by the New York Rangers 9-0 that, hey, this pride's got to kick in. This is still Giroux and Voracek and Couturier and veteran players on this team that got to be ashamed with the way they played against the New York Rangers. So I thought it was a decent bounce back, and the Islanders finally had lost a game with Anders Lee being out. I think that's a significant loss, their captain as well. And here I am thinking, things are looking great here, 3-0. And then I'm shitting bricks there late in the third period as the Flyers defense comes back out in a bad way in the third period. They blow a 3-0 lead. Islanders tie it, but the Flyers thankfully rescue themselves to win it late with a late third period goal to survive and hang on for a 4-3 victory. I'm mad I didn't bet the over, but all I was hearing from the Flyers is we got to dig in defensively after the Ranger game, and that game still went over the total. So I'm mad that I didn't bet the over. I just bought into this coach speak and player speak from the Flyers that, hey, we got to keep things tight, checking, low scoring. We got to dig in defensively, and the defense came unglued again in the third period, and it very nearly cost them the game again. So I'm not passing up the Flyers over again this time. I'm not involved in this game from a side perspective. The Islanders have issues. I think the Islanders are a team I'd be worried to back a little bit moving forward because, Anders Lee's a big loss. They've now lost 2 in a row, this Islanders team. I think their wins before that, they weren't nearly as impressive in those performances as maybe the end result might show. So keep an eye on the Islanders. They're just not a team that right now I'm in a rush to back. I'd lean maybe the Flyers again, but maybe they could get a little confidence going. But I survived in that game after the Rangers debacle with them. I'm not in a rush to back them again here, but I'm going to stick with the over. It's 5.5. It got there in the last game. Philly's gone over the total in 6 straight games now. 6 straight games for the Flyers have gone over the total. 5.5 is a reasonable number. Even with the Islanders involved, who like to keep it low scoring and tight checking defensively with that structure they play under Trotz. I still think we can get to the over here at 5.5. What's your take here, Pete? Islanders and Flyers.
Nothing really on the side. I guess I'm a lean towards the Flyers as well. I kind of want to get a little bit more data on how the Islanders are going to kind of respond and play without Lee. I think that's like you said, it's a huge loss, and I want to wait and see on them in terms of how they're playing. One point with the Flyers is just crazy how bad their goaltending has been. You talk about like their poor defense, but if you really look at it, they're actually allowing, I believe, they're above average in terms of like expected goals allowed, and also like above average in terms of high danger chances allowed against. And that's in terms of like all strengths. Like you just take, total body of work and like the power plays, all of those things, penalty kills, whatever. Their goaltending has just been horrendous, and it's been like statistically like worse than the league. So, if they start to get a little bit of, solid goaltending performance, I think this team can really turn it around. But until then, it's just a team where I just can't, I can't trust them because I keep thinking like, oh, they're going to get positive regression from this goaltending. And then they get up 3-0, and then all of a sudden it's 3-3 within 10 minutes. So, overall, the Islanders statistically have been phenomenal this entire year. But since, Lee's been out, it's been kind of a weird situation where it might take them a little bit to adapt, and I want to wait and see. And this is a game I really just don't want any part of, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a hard one from a side perspective.
Yeah.
And the one thing I don't normally like doing is betting against the Islanders off a loss. And when Barry Trotz called them out too after the Flyer game, he said even though we came back and we played terrible for 2 periods, so you would think the Islanders are much better tonight. And again, the Flyers still with defensive warts, and this is a collective issue right now. Their defense has given up too many open lanes to the net, open pathways, odd man rushes, too much time and space to make plays. Like, get a stick in the lane, will you? I mean, a lot of these players they're not doing that right now. There's too many easy plays being made in the offensive zone against this Flyer defense. And yeah, Hart and Elliott, that combo, they have to be better too. They haven't been great, but this is on the entire team, the goalie and the blue line. They both have a helping hand in these struggles they've had.
For sure.
All right, next up, we've got Calgary and Toronto. Toronto minus 160, home favorites, total 6 shaded to the over in this one. So I have been on Calgary every game since the coaching change. And what are we now? 3-1, I believe. 2 games against Montreal, the first game against Edmonton, lost the second game against Edmonton when they got bombed. And then I came back with Calgary last night for a small bet against Toronto, even with the Leafs off the rest, and the Leafs, with the you would think getting healthier with Wayne Simmons back, and they put Galchenyuk in the lineup, try to get their offense going a little bit. It was just a perfect situation and spot for Toronto, and still lose that game. But they had their chances, they didn't bury them. And for Freddie Anderson, look, I've given him a lot of leeway and wiggle room to say, you know what, he's been up and down. He's not 100%. What I don't understand with this Leafs team is he basically said 2 days ago, I'm not 100%. I'm still feeling some things. Well, why the hell is he in there then? Yeah. Like, seriously, what? Look, I know Michael Hutchinson is Michael Hutchinson, and Jack Campbell was injured. They didn't want Hutchinson playing a bunch of games in a row because he is what he is. He's not that great. But you're still going to force a Freddie Anderson, who's admitted publicly he's not 100% right health-wise, in there. That's a mistake, in my opinion. But they did it anyway, and you're right. I think he's got to play better, but I think he's not 100% health-wise. And he's basically said it, to the media earlier this week. So the bottom line is we won't be seeing Freddie Anderson tonight on the back-to-back. We'll be seeing Jack Campbell, who's finally back for the Toronto Maple Leafs and in net tonight. And this guy was playing outstanding. He's been great ever since they got him from the LA Kings. I don't worry about the rust or the long layoff. He's had multiple instances where he's come back from a stint on the injured list. And in that first game back, he's played great. He's had no issues with rust. He's had no issues with, not being able to be sharp in the net. He keeps himself ready. That's what's great about Jack Campbell. And I think he'll go in there. He'll play well tonight. I'm actually pivoting away from Calgary tonight. I think this is good setup for Toronto tonight. They play hard for Campbell. They love the guy. He's always smiling. He's always positive. He's always upbeat. There's no negativity. And I think the part of that is he's not on Twitter, or not on Twitter much. You can get negative in a damn hurry when you're seeing all these morons on Twitter, squawking at you when you lose or whatever. Certainly I've gotten the brunt of that at times in the past. It gets to you. It bothers you. And you just want to just say, you want to say something. But Jack Campbell stays away from negative thoughts, negative people. He's a positive guy. He's a great teammate. Watch the Leafs go out there, play one hell of a game tonight for him. And it's desperate times. You don't want to drop 2 in a row to Calgary in this losing streak. I thought they played well enough to win last night, the Leafs, to be honest with you. Chances were there. Markstrom was very good in the third period. Calgary played a tight defensive game. The key for Toronto is don't fall behind this Daryl Sutter team. We know how good Daryl Sutter teams are going back to LA when they have a lead. They tighten the game up. They're tough to come back against. Get the lead. Force Calgary out of their comfort zone. That's what Edmonton did just a few days ago. I think if Toronto does that, and I think the onus will be to get that first goal, then the game will flow easier for Toronto. So I like the Leafs in regulation here in this one. I'm going to take them in regulation here. I think like the spot, like the situation. Remember, Calgary won the first game against Edmonton. What happened in the second game in the rematch when the Oilers were chomping at the bit looking to avenge the defeat? They didn't play well. And I think Toronto's in that same spot. They need it. They played well enough to win last night. I like the Leafs in regulation tonight, minus 110. And right now, I think Jack Campbell's a little bit more of a reliable option than an inconsistent, banged up, less than 100% in his own words, Freddie Anderson for this team right now. Pete, what do you think here, Flames and Leafs?
Same. I'm on the same exact play as you. I'm going to be on Toronto in regulation. I really, really like the look today just because you have no Markstrom. in the net for Calgary, which is going to be, I think that's going to be a massive problem. And then the Leafs are actually going with a much better goalie today in Campbell. I think this is, really, really good spot to back Toronto. Their numbers, I mean, the thing about Toronto is crazy. So their PDO numbers have been pretty much like fluctuating like more than any other team this entire year. So their shooting percentage and save percentage numbers, over the past like 10 or 15 games has been absolutely terrible. Like they've just been getting like the worst luck you've ever seen. But before that, they were literally getting like the luckiest you ever seen. So it's like totally evened out. I believe if you follow Money Puck on Twitter, they mentioned this. They had a graph that showed this today. But yeah, it's crazy how much it's fluctuated. Their stats really haven't changed that much. So Toronto is still playing really, really solid right now. So I just think with them playing solid, they absolutely crushed Calgary in the metrics in that first game. I have no idea. The only reason they didn't win that game is because they're starting an injured goalie who, he can't make like basic saves. I think the Flames had like, couple super easy wrist shots in that first period that he just completely missed. So really like Toronto. I think Toronto in regulation is the only way I would look at this. And if they play how they did their last game, they're going to win the majority of games in regulation against Calgary. So I am on the same page with you. Toronto in regulation is going to be a play for me.
All right, like in Toronto in regulation, -110 as well, Pete, in this one. Yeah, I mean, and as well with Riddick in net, you would think that it's projected. I'd expect him to be in. You can't work Markstrom into the ground, wear him out. I think this is the spot you got to put Riddick in there if you're Sutter in the Flames. So I would expect him in there. And Campbell, 3-0, 1.33 goals against, .951 save percentage, and a shutout. So unbelievable numbers for Campbell. And again, they've played very, very good in front of him as well. So I'd expect that tonight. The Leafs, they got to stop the bleeding, and I think the spot matchup and certainly the goaltending matchup should work in their favor a little bit. Vancouver and Montreal -170. Home favorites here, total 6 across the board. This is one of those spots that, when you look at it from a Vancouver perspective, the end of a very long road trip, a pretty successful road trip, including an overtime win last night against Montreal. This is not the spot I'm looking to take that Vancouver team in. Not at all. End of a long road trip, satisfied, beat up Ottawa a couple times, thrilling win against Montreal last night, a JT Miller overtime winner with some shoddy defensive play in their own zone by Montreal, allowing that goal to happen. But I think this is a spot where Vancouver, going home after this, minds are on that, get back home. It's been a great road trip. And, oh, yeah, Thatcher Demko, who's been carrying the team on the back for the last couple of weeks, this Canucks team carrying them on his back. He's not in tonight. It's Braden Holtby for the Vancouver Canucks. And look, Braden Holtby's had a nice career, but I don't want to use the W word. That's harsh. But I think he is a little bit, washed right now for the Canucks. He is. He's struggled. He's been really, really struggling and fighting the puck and routine saves that he usually should make. He's not made them in the last couple of starts that he's made. He has a 4-7 record, 3.56 goals against average, .893 save percentage. So it's been a rough go of it for Braden Holtby. Montreal losing the game last night. They lost in overtime, back-to-back games in overtime. Now, what are they, 0-9 in overtime? This Montreal Canadiens team lost back-to-back overtime games this week against Winnipeg and Vancouver. I like Montreal in regulation, and if you like Montreal, take them in regulation because they can't win in overtime, right? Take them in regulation. Don't worry about the full game money line. Who cares? They don't win in overtime, this team. If you think Montreal wins the game, just take the better price. Take -120 in regulation. That's what I've done here. And look, I've been reluctant to go against Vancouver because I saw this coming a mile away. They started to play better. They got Hamonic on the blue line. Their defense is healthy. Thatcher Demko is back to playing like he did in the bubble last year. You look at Thatcher Demko, and I know you pay attention to goals saved above average, GSAA. He's right up there in that number. He has been that good, that outstanding for the Canucks in net. So now you take him out and you put Holtby there. You've got Montreal off the back-to-back losses. They could have won either game. I think they win tonight. I like Montreal in regulation. And again, take them in regulation. They don't win in overtime. So if they win, it's probably going to be in regulation. What do you think here with this one, Pete? Canucks and half.
Demko's just been covering up like insane holes with the Canucks for the last, for this entire season. I would even argue that he's probably the second best goalie in the league right now, just because of what he's like the quality of shots that he's facing, that the Canucks defense is giving up. It's absolutely insane what he's been able to do to keep them in all these games. So without him, you're going to throw in Holtby, which is a significant downgrade. Probably one of the biggest downgrades that you're going to see in terms of goaltending. So I am also on Montreal in regulation. This is actually my favorite play of the day. It's going to be a larger play for me. It'll be my best bet on here. Just think with how Montreal can play on the 5-on-5, with how they kind of dominate metrically. The only time you can really beat them, the times when people beat them is when they get outstanding performances from goaltenders, which with the Canucks, with Demko, you can run into that. And that's pretty much exactly what happened in our last game. So like you said, long road trip for the Canucks, that needs to be factored in as well. Probably a little bit fatigued here, a really long road trip. And, really good. I mean, Montreal is, they got to win this game. I mean, they've just been, losing a lot of games they shouldn't have been. So I like them. I think this is you're not going to find a better pick on the board today, in my opinion, than the Canadiens regulation.
There you go. Montreal in regulation. So we have consensus here with the Habs in regulation. Yes, Steve Priest, last start for Holtby was March 2. He gave up 4 goals and a loss to the Winnipeg Jets. And to be honest with you, the Canucks played okay in that game, and there were some goals that he probably should have stopped in that game. So yeah, there's a reason that we're a little bit reluctant to trust the Canucks with Braden Holtby in net. Certainly when you compare the Canucks with Holtby in net compared to Thatcher Demko. We got Columbus and Carolina. Carolina minus 180. Home favorites, total 5.5 across the board in this one. Carolina back home after losing to Detroit and facing Columbus, and they lose again. And all of a sudden, the Hurricanes a little bit of a fun. They miss Vincent Trocheck. People laugh at that, but he's been outstanding for this team. And really, with him injured, and Tara Vinen's been on the IR for a bit, but their offense has regressed a little bit. Trocheck being out has been a big part of that. They really have. They're like the last couple of games. Detroit, they have trouble finding the back of the net, finishing their chances, and they did again with Columbus in their last game. Rod Brindamore saying we've got to be a lot more aggressive offensively, and we got to take the game to Columbus. They said we sat back, and they did sit back in the first period. They were actually dominated by Columbus in the first period the other night. I expect that from Carolina. I don't want to lay this price with the Canes. I think they'll win, but I think the better bet, especially at 5.5, and with the goaltending matchup being what it is, Elvis was a great singer in his day. Elvis ain't a great goalie for this Columbus team. I'm not a big Merzlikins guy for the Jackets. He's in net tonight for them. His numbers are very, very mediocre. What are we looking at? 3.02 goals against average, barely above 900 save percentage. After Nedeljkovic played the other night, back to James Reimer, Carolina. He struggled in his last start against Detroit, and he's kind of struggled lately. I mean, I've talked about him. The more he started, I think the more his play has kind of declined in the process. So just instead of the side in this game, I lean Carolina, but I like the total even more than that because, the Jackets do have the personnel to score goals, right? They've got Atkinson, they've got Lyon. They haven't exactly put the puck in the net consistently the last 2 weeks, but they've got goal scorers on this team. And you saw signs of that offense coming back to life the last couple of games, especially the win against Carolina the other night. So I think they can find the back of the net against Reimer, who I'm not exactly got the utmost faith in. But on the flip side, Carolina should definitely get their share as well against Merzlikins coming off the loss the other night. They don't want to lose 2 in a row at home to the Jackets. So I think they show up offensively in particular. I like the over here, over 5.5 for me. Columbus, Carolina at minus 110. What's your take here on this one, Pete?
Yeah, I mean, if you looked at that first period, it was horrible. I think the Canes just sat back and played the exact game that Columbus wanted them to play, which, they're not going to win. It's going to be a very ugly game if you play a kind of like Blue Jacket style hockey where, it's very similar to kind of, it's just dull, boring hockey. And that's the opposite of, how the Canes want to play, which is, as aggressive as possible, get as many pucks on the net, play super fast pace, get the forecheck going. The Canes weren't able to do any of those things. But then in the second period and the third period, the Canes actually played great. They kind of took it right back to them and, just ended up just not being able to get pucks in the net. So just kind of a weird game. But I'm a little bit concerned with the Canes. I mean, if you do look at kind of their last, 10 or so games, hasn't been too great. I would lean to Carolina, lean to them in regulation. It's a borderline kind of, I'm still debating if I want to take that or not. I do think they're significantly better than Columbus, and how they played the last, 2 periods. If they can continue how they played like that, continue that over to today, it's going to be really solid. But it's really hard for me to ever back the Canes right now at high money line prices with Reimer in net. That's the one that's what's throwing me off right now. So I like you said, I think this is a really, really poor goaltending matchup. I would definitely, lean to the over as well. I think that's definitely a good look there. But yeah, it's hard to back the Canes at a -170 tag, just with, a little bit declining in play. And then you also have Reimer in net, who's just been, you don't really know what you're going to get. There's times where he'll have a really solid game, and times where he looks like the worst goalie in the league. So it's hard for me to back that. And I think the Canes have, once they get Mrazek back, they'll be a little bit more solid, just because then I think they have two options. And I think Reimer's actually probably the third guy right now. So it's just tough for me to back them at the price with him.
Yeah, you're right. Declining play, the offense drying up a little, and Reimer's play, which is a little like Reimer just lost to Detroit, in his last start. That tells you all you need to know about his play. Speaking of Detroit, I think they're the next team that we're talking about. Yes, they're hosting the Dallas Stars. We've got Dallas -190, road favorites in this game. The total 5.5 here, shaded to the under in this one. Asking Detroit to beat the same team 2 games in a row is not something I'm willing to do. The question is, can we get behind Dallas and Anton Khudobin, who's going to be in net? They lost to Detroit with Ottinger the other night, who's actually played well. Khudobin, not quite so much this year. It's been a bit of a struggle for him. You look at Khudobin, 5-9. His numbers aren't terrible, 2.65 goals against, .907 save percentage. I think a product that early in the season, Dallas was not scoring. Like, their offense was shooting blanks. They were terrible. Their power play was horrendous for a long period of time. But I think Dallas is going to perk up offensively. I don't know what happened the other night, but they just couldn't bury their chances. That's been a problem most of the season. But they do now at least have Alexander Radulov back. Tyler Seguin is nearing a return. So you would think Dallas moving forward is going to be able to get some more offensive production. The question for the Red Wings is who's going to be in net tonight, because Bernier's actually been pretty solid, but injured the last game, significant. So there's a chance you're not going to see him today in this game for the Detroit Red Wings. It looks like he is going to be out for sure. So probably Thomas, even though it's not been confirmed. And look, I know our guest here today, he's day-to-day as of right now, says Jeff Blashill. But our guest here today has talked about how frustrating it's been with Jeff Blashill and this Detroit Red Wings team in terms of announcing to the masses who the goalie is going to be on a daily basis. A lot of times you find out, whoa, just 20 minutes before the damn game starts, who's going to be in net for the Detroit Red Wings. So it's a tough way to go about it. But I think this is one of those days you can feel relatively confident, at least, that it's going to be Thomas Greiss tonight for the Detroit Red Wings. And like I said, you take him out of that Islanders defensive system, and it's been a lot more of a struggle for him here against Detroit. So I guess right now I'm leaning Dallas in regular. There's a lot of in regulation today on this card because of so many big favorites, but you just can't lay -190, by itself on the money line. You've got to try to trim it down to greater value with either regulation or puck line. I'd rather go regulation than puck line with Dallas, because you're never fully sure if they're going to score enough to win by 2 goals or more. So I do lean Dallas here in regulation, which is currently at -125, -130. Pete, what do you think here with the Stars and the Red Wings?
Yeah, with Greiss and net, I never can back Detroit. I'm always waiting. I mean, I always tweet about that, but yeah, you have to wait just till the last minute with Detroit, because you never know who's going to be in net. But I'm about 99% sure it's going to be Greiss today. And if that's the case, I think you can only look to Dallas. It's just been so weird watching them, because you feel like, they're in control of a lot of the games. They play really well. Their offense is obviously what's holding them back, but it's just been such a weird season watching them, because they're just right into so many, I feel like so many unlucky results, a lot of just weird overtimes where they end up on the wrong side of it. Just been the strangest season for Dallas. But today I would lean to Dallas. I think, I'm not going to lay -190 with the Stars pretty much ever. But this is a game that they definitely should win. Just a much better goaltending matchup. You have, a way better 5-on-5 team. And they're coming off of a loss where it was super misleading. I mean, I think the Stars had double the shots, and they almost kind of came all the way back at the end, but just couldn't do it. So yeah, I would only lean to the Stars. And if you're going to play them, I would go like puck line regulation play, -1 play, something like that. Just try to like get it more towards like a -110, -120-ish play. But yeah, that's the only way. You're not going to get -110 on the Stars regulation, probably like -130. But that's probably like the only way I would probably look at the game.
All right, next game, we got the New York Rangers and the Washington Capitals. The Capitals -140, home favorites, total 6, shaded to the over. I don't know when this Washington winning streak is coming to an end, but I think it's coming to an end soon, because sometimes when I see these teams on these long winning streaks, they play well for the large part of the streak, but then they start hearing everybody praise them and look how good the Capitals are playing, and then all of a sudden their level of play declines a little bit. And even though they beat the Rangers last night 2-1, we saw signs of that. Like, they were pretty heavily outplayed last night by the New York Rangers. No question about that. And if not for two outstanding individual efforts by Alex Ovechkin, who scored both Washington goals in the third period, they were going to lose that game last night and see the winning streak snapped. And I worry about that, because usually that's the signs that, hey, eventually the winning streak's not going to last forever. And that's one of the few times during this win streak where Washington, they've had the game taken to them. They basically had the territorial edge, and the play dictated to them in a big way by this Rangers team, who, to be honest with you, I think they're kind of saying, get rid of David Quinn, to be honest with you, the way they've played in these two games with the fill-in coaching staff from the Hartford Wolfpack in the AHL, with Chris Knobloch and Gord Murphy and Chris Drury taken over on the bench with David Quinn and the regular New York Ranger coaching staff out due to COVID-19 issues. And they've played two outstanding hockey games with this coaching staff back there. They, obviously they absolutely beat the living daylights out of the Flyers 9-0. And last night they lose, but they probably should have won the hockey game because they took it to the Capitals. They carried the play in that game. So, and really, to be honest with you, dating back to last Saturday when Artemi Panarin came back, that's really when this started for the Rangers. They're starting to play a little bit better. And obviously, when you have arguably one of your best offensive players back in the lineup, it helps. When Mika Zibanejad is starting to get things going a little bit again, it helps. They got Buchnevich back from injury as well earlier this week. So the Rangers are a team to keep an eye on. They fell short last night, but they deserved a better fate. This could be a team with a little value, a little bit of a bet on type of team in the short term. I don't know if it's sustainable, because the Rangers are so maddeningly inconsistent, and they've kind of had goaltending that's been kind of like Philly. You expect more out of Hart and Elliott than we've gotten at times. You kind of say the same about Georgiev and Shesterkin. You expect more from them than we've gotten at times. I lean to the Rangers here, but in terms of stepping in front of win streaks, I don't usually like to do that. Usually I like to bet. I'm going to stay off it. Maybe bet against Washington after the streak gets snapped, because sometimes there's that bubble burst. They lose that game after a win streak, and then they lose the next game right after that. And again, with Washington, just keep on winning games. Doesn't it feel like they should be laying a little more than -130? That's the other issue. So lots of going around in my head, but probably not a game I'm going to be involved in when it's all said and done. What do you think here, Pete? Rangers Capitals?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would probably lean to. I was on the Capitals last time, and I think that was maybe just it was a super lucky win. They obviously had absolutely no business winning that game yesterday, but Ovechkin just somehow just was like a one-man show at the end of that and just took the game by storm. But if you actually look at the Rangers recently, so they've just been a weird team, like you said. Like the beginning of the year, I thought they were playing really, really well metrically, and then for a while they really, really struggled, and then now for the last 10, I mean, I think since Panarin's came back, they've looked really, really well again, really, really good again. So this is probably either a game where you got to take either the Rangers on the money line or just completely pass it. I think the Capitals they're not as good. They're good. They're a solid team. I don't think they're as good as their record. So this win streak is definitely going to come to an end soon, and very misleading result last game. And if the Rangers play like that again, they're obviously going to win. But you don't really. I mean, obviously, we have no idea how they're going to play just because they're super inconsistent. I think the other thing you kind of have to look at with Do you know who's like the projected kind of starter for the Rangers today? Like, is Kincaid still going to be an option for them, or do we know if who's going to be in that?
Projected to be Shesterkin, but nothing confirmed as of yet.
Okay.
And if you look at the Rangers goalie depth chart right now, it looks like they've got Georgiev and Kincaid. Shesterkin's been on the IR, but the fact he's listed as projected means they probably expect him right now. See, I haven't gotten an update, but the fact he's projected means he's nearing a return. So keep an eye on that. It won't be Georgiev. So you're looking at probably at Shesterkin or Kincaid. It's depending on what Shesterkin is. They're going to probably see how he feels in the pregame skate. You know, this is one of those situations where keep an eye on it 30 minutes before the game. You'll probably hear confirmation one way or another, but probably Shesterkin or Kincaid tonight.
Yeah, I won't be able to back the Rangers if Kincaid's in net. I think he had a couple good, out games where, he performed really, really well. And then I just think he's not going to be a solid option back there just in the long term. And I'm not going to back them if he's in net, especially against the Capitals where, their expected goal metrics might not be the greatest, but the shooting talent on that team is unreal. It's one of the best in the league. So if he's going to be facing just like high quality shots with a poor goaltender, I'm not going to take my chances. Even if the Rangers do double him up in shots again, it's going to be playing with fire if Kincaid's back in net.
Yeah, definitely. So keep an eye on that. If you're interested in this game and the goalies matter to you as much as they matter to us, keep an eye on this because you could be looking at a situation where you want to know closer to puck drop exactly who's in net here for the Rangers. We got Arizona and Anaheim. Arizona minus 125 road favorites, 5.5 shaded to the under the total. I've got a lot of games with a lot of opinions on them. This ain't one of them. I don't know how you can lay a price with Arizona. This team they got 2 goals early and you're thinking, wow, the offense is coming to life, but they should against Ryan Miller. And then Ryan Miller looks like 2006 Ryan Miller for the last 2 periods in his Buffalo Sabres prime of his career. And they don't get anything after that. Anaheim rallies to win 3-2. Arizona is just not very good. I think we got to admit that. It's just a team that last year was in the playoffs. They relied on good defense, timely scoring. Well, they're having a hard time generating chances. They're having a hard time getting any sort of offensive traction. Just to get on the offensive zone is a chore for them, in a lot of games, this Arizona team. So that's a concern. Trevor Zegras. The one thing I like in this game is Trevor Zegras' goal scoring prop. He finally got off the schneid, scored his first NHL goal to tie that game with Arizona the other night. This guy's going to be one hell of a goal scorer in this league. He's a great prospect. He was awesome, just awesome for the U.S. in the World Juniors back in December, leading them to a gold medal. I think now that he's got that first goal, monkey off the back a little bit, watch him now pot a couple of goals moving forward for Anaheim. So I like that. I'm not betting a side or total in this game, but I'm going to bet Trevor Zegras to score a goal, and you can get a pretty solid price. The last I checked, it was around plus 250 for him to score a goal tonight. I like that. I like these teams, these players that are talented.
Yeah.
The puck wasn't going in for them. They finally get a goal, and I think the floodgates might open a little bit for a very talented young kid in Trevor Zegras. What do you think here with this game, Anaheim, Arizona?
Yeah, I was on Anaheim in the first game, which came through. It's just tough. The thing about the Ducks is at this point, I just think they're pretty much in full rebuild mode. I'm not really sure if they're actually trying to, I keep kind of jokingly tweet about this, but I don't really know if they really care about winning right now. So it's tough to back a team where I think they're in like the full stages of like a rebuild, playing a bunch of young players, which they're super talented guys. But it's hard for me to, consistently keep backing Anaheim when, even if I have numerical value, I know that they're not really, I hate saying professional teams aren't trying to win because they're obviously trying to win, but when you're in a rebuild and when you're already out of it, it's tough. But the same thing with the Coyotes. They're just not a very good team at all right now. I was actually pretty high on them kind of as the season was going on. At the beginning of the year, they were playing really well. I thought they had a lot of promise. And then, Kemper's injured now, and a lot of kind of goaltending question marks. Now you also have their metrics of, when Arizona plays a solid team like Minnesota, Colorado, or Vegas, they just get absolutely manhandled, which just really just destroys their metrics when they play against these solid teams. So I think this is just like a total coin flip game where, you're basically either going to go Ducks at a plus money price if you can stomach backing them, or you just completely stay away, because I don't know how. I mean, it's hard for me to lay any sort of minus price with Arizona. I mean, there's nothing that you can show me metrically or anything that they're doing that warrants anything more than like a minus 125 price here.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem. I mean, Arizona is capable of winning this game, and I think they will. But I mean, minus 130 on the road with this group, not in my wheelhouse. That's what I would say about it. All right, we're down to the last two games now. St. Louis, San Jose. St. Louis minus 145, road favorites, total 6 across the board here. I lost with the over last night, but I'm coming back to it here because you had Jones and Binnington, and ultimately they both played better than I expected, especially Binnington, who's had a really rough go lately for the Blues. But you're probably looking at Ville Husso and Devan Dubnyk tonight in the back-to-back between these two teams. And you talk about guys that have struggled. I mean, Dubnyk, 3.12 goals against, 904 save percentage. Husso, I mean, really poor numbers, 3.57 goals against, 879 save percentage for the St. Louis Blues. So, the goals didn't show up last night in the game between these two teams. There were chances. Both teams played pretty respectable, at least at the defensive end of the ice, but I think there's a better chance to see both of these teams have better success offensively here in the rematch. And as much as we have issues trusting, or at least I do, Jones and Binnington, you look at the numbers for Dubnyk and Husso, they're just not very good at all. So, lost the over last night, but that's not going to get me to shy away completely from going back to the well with it here tonight. So St. Louis and San Jose over the total, over 6, minus 110, minus 115. You'll remember they played a Saturday night hockey game in San Jose, a few weeks ago, and it was 7-6. I don't think we'll see that again in this game. And Dubnyk was in net for the Sharks that night. But I do think we get this game to go over the total just a little bit. It looks like our special guest's having camera issues, but I think we can still hear him, so that's good. Remember, this is on podcast too, so as long as we can hear you, it's all good. What do you think here, St. Louis, San Jose?
Sorry, I don't know what's going on with the camera. For some reason, it just completely went out. You can still hear me though, right?
Yeah, I got you loud and clear. You're good.
Okay, cool. So with San Jose, I was actually on them their last game against St. Louis, which was a tough one because they were up 1-0. They give up a shorthanded goal. They have a power play in overtime. Just somehow they couldn't get the job done there. They actually played a super even game with St. Louis. So I'll probably end up backing the Sharks again. I just think the Blues are actually, if you look at kind of how they've performed over the last month, it really hasn't been that impressive. And I'm not just even Binnington, I'm just not really sold on any of these goalies right now. I don't really know kind of what to expect from him. He's been super inconsistent. And then if you have Husso in there, I mean, he's been one of the worst goalies in the league. So with the Sharks, obviously their goalies are horrible too. But if you look at just overall, just kind of 5-on-5 play between these two teams recently, it's been super even. So for me, I'll probably end up going back to the Sharks again. They'll probably, find some way to lose in overtime or lose by 1 goal, super close game or something like that. But I just don't really think there's not too much of a difference between these two teams. I think I'm going to be kind of fading St. Louis quite a bit, kind of moving forward this year, just because, if they continue kind of how they've been playing recently, I just can't really trust them, especially with a lot of these matchups. I think they're a step behind Minnesota, step behind Colorado, step behind Vegas, and I think the Kings are even kind of right in line with the Blues right now too. So this team might actually miss the playoffs, and I wouldn't really be surprised. So actually gonna probably bet on San Jose. I haven't really decided yet, but that one's definitely on my radar.
Yeah, it's Dubnyk for San Jose. It's likely to be Husso for St. Louis, but the Blues goaltending not confirmed just yet as of right now. And I like the over too because San Jose played low scoring with Vegas in the first game, and in the second game, the floodgates opened. I think we're going to see more of the same here. You had a low scoring game with the Blues and the Sharks the other night, and then the second game, things are a little bit looser. The offenses make their adjustments, and the Sharks' offense has been fine most of the season. Even though they're not a great team, scoring goals has not been their issue. They've got multiple guys that have been pretty good for them lately offensively. Kane, Couture, LeBanc, Timo Meyer's back and healthy again. Tomas Hertl is back and healthy again. Dylan Gambrell has chipped in on that third line for the Sharks. from an offensive standpoint. So they're getting goals. So is St. Louis. St. Louis, it's actually the offense that's kind of carried them with the injuries. They miss Colton Parayko and Carl Gunnarsson. They're not the same defensive team without those two guys. Factor that in, and Husso, and San Jose should score. But I also think with the Blues, the way they're going with Shen, Tarasenko back, Perron's in good form, Mike Hoffman, Jaden Schwartz is now back, another person to help, another player to help them offensively. Zach Sanford's been an offensive spark plug for the Blues. I think we'll see goals both ways here tonight in this one. All right, final game on this massive Saturday card. Winnipeg and Edmonton. We've got Edmonton minus 130 to minus 140 home favorites, total 6 across the board in this one. The Edmonton Oilers taking care of business last game against the Winnipeg Jets. A tight checking, low-scoring affair between those two teams. The Oilers get the victory. Winnipeg loses, and you know what that means? It's Winnipeg off a loss, and all that has done all season long is cash in one game after another. And I've been on this all season long. I spotted it early. Good teams bounce back off a loss, and nobody's been better at that. Not a few teams have been better than the Winnipeg Jets, bouncing back off a loss. I expect that tonight. I like the great value, in my opinion, with Winnipeg here. You can get plus 115, plus 120. They've been just lights out off a loss. They're going to have Hellebuck back in net tonight after Laurent Brossoit got the start the other night. It was one of those rare games where the Jets, who have a very, very capable offense with Connor and Ehlers and Scheifele and Wheeler, they got held in check by the Oilers on Thursday. Usually when they don't score a lot of goals in their previous game, they bounce back offensively the next game. That has been a stark pattern of results this year for the Winnipeg Jets. So very simple. And in these games where, again, the Jets and the Oilers are neck and neck in the standings, they're both right there, and both of them right just barely trailing Toronto in the division. These are games you don't want to lose both games. They're important games. Jets are battling the Oilers head-to-head. The Jets have been magnificent off a loss this year. So I'm on Winnipeg here, plus 115, plus 120 in this one. What's your take here, Pete? Final game on the card, Jets and Oilers.
I locked in the Jets plus 125 yesterday. It's probably my second favorite pick on the card today. If you look at like the last game against Edmonton, they actually did play a little bit better than them. We ran into Koskinen somehow played a really solid game, which is just very kind of outlier in that regard. And then obviously you're getting Hellebuck back today, who, you're going to have one of the best goalies in the league back there. And a lot of Edmonton stats. So something that's super interesting this year is Edmonton's just absolutely beat up on Ottawa, beat up on Vancouver, beat up on, a lot of these teams. And they've really acquired all of these solid stats just based off of playing like a lot of the bottom tier teams in this division. So I think when Edmonton plays against the better teams here, they do tend to get outplayed. And I just think that the Jets are overall a better team. So to be getting a plus 125 when we think that we have the better team here, they've been really, really solid off the back-to-backs. Back off of a loss. Like when they lose, I think they've won pretty much every single game the next time. Which I don't put too much weight into that, but it is something. If they're metrically performing really, really well. But yeah, you have, getting your better goalie back off of a loss when I just think the Jets are better than the Oilers. I'm going to go and take the Jets every single time here. So I'm on the same agreement with you here with the Jets. I think it's going to be one of my favorite plays today too.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's like clockwork for me with the Jets off a loss. And, it's not going to last forever. They're eventually going to lose 2 games in a row. Even I understand that. But as long as they keep finding ways to win and avoid those 2-game losing streaks, and you're getting good prices, and you think they're getting a price where these two teams are pretty close to even. And you could even say the Jets, especially in the last head-to-head game, you're right. I thought the Jets, were carrying the play a little bit more than the Oilers were, and yet they didn't get the win to go with it. They deserved a better fate. So both of us liking Winnipeg here in this one. And we've gotten through all 14 games. This has got to be one of the biggest, largest NHL cards we've had on a single day all season. Pete, your great analysis as always. We appreciate you joining us. You're a special guest, so let people know where they can find you and talk to you and all kinds of things.
Yeah. So my Twitter profile is my name right there. It's at Ice King Bets. Pretty much, just what I do is I'm running a predictive model that I'm basically using just like a bunch of advanced stats for. And, we have monthly subscribers. We pretty much, we're running everything through a new app called BetStamp, which if you download the BetStamp app and follow my name on there is Ice Kings on BetStamp, you can find all my documented results for the whole year and all my plays there. And you can actually sign up for like monthly and yearly packages there. And then what I'm doing for Twitter is I give out one free play per day, which, I just want to give kind of everybody like a taste of kind of what you get with, signing up for like a VIP or a membership there. So one free play a day. Saturday, I give out all my plays through a podcast like this, or I do my own Periscope usually. And then every other day is kind of like one free play. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, my Twitter is Ice King Bets. We're almost at 5,000 followers, which is crazy because, I think I created this account, 2-3 years ago from nothing. And now it's just completely blown up. So really appreciate all the support and, especially, thank you, Ian, for, letting me on and bringing more awareness to everything. And thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. The people that are good, they do their work and they're good at it. And, obviously your analysis is good. And you're right. I don't want to toot the Ice Guys show horn too much here, but I know you being on this show helps your Twitter follower count a little bit. I'm sure it has, because we get lots of people watching the show on a daily basis, downloading the podcast. And when they hear you or see you for the first time, you'll get a little boost in followers thanks to being on this show. I'm pretty sure of that. So good stuff. Let's get to best bets and wrap it up for this Saturday edition. We got some good news for you. New Jersey's up 1-0.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh. So, good stuff. Good start there for the Devils. We'll see if they can keep that going. Best bet, Pete, the floor is yours. What do you like most here on this Saturday card?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned it before, but I'm going to go Montreal in regulation. That's going to be my best bet for today. Just think Holtby is going to be in for a rough day, especially with, how much quality the Canadiens generate versus the Canucks give up. You're not going to have your, safety net back there with Demko bailing them out consistently. Just like situationally, it's very, very good for Montreal. Last game of a successful road trip for Vancouver, and kind of a super, it's not a must-win game. I mean, every game is, but the Canadiens, really, really need a win here, and I just think 5-on-5 overall, they're going to be way better than Vancouver. And with Holtby back there, you're now throwing in a really, really bad goaltender. So I like Montreal to bounce back and get a win in regulation at -110. That's going to be my favorite play for the day.
All right, Montreal in regulation, -110 against Vancouver for Pete with his best bet. Follow him on Twitter at Ice King Bets. And my best bet, it was my best bet on this show Thursday with this team. It's been my best bet a bunch of times with this team off the loss. We're going back to that game we've just talked about, Winnipeg +120 against Edmonton. That is going to be my best bet for this Saturday card. You can find +120 at William Hill, a couple other places, +115. So shop around. Make sure you get that best price currently available. I go by prices that are out there now. I actually bet this game earlier at a better price than what's readily available now, but got to give you the prices that are available as we do this show. And right now, +120 is the best price currently with Winnipeg at William Hill. So make sure you shop around, but I like the Winnipeg Jets +120 against Edmonton. That'll be my best bet for this Saturday card. And that'll wrap up this edition of the show. Thanks to everyone for tuning in live. Reminder, we're on 7 days a week, live on YouTube, Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern, Saturday, Sunday, noon Eastern. And if you can't watch the show live, make sure you download the podcast version of the Ice Guys show on all major podcast providers. Thanks to our special guest at Ice King Bets on Twitter for joining us. I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great Saturday. Enjoy the games and good luck. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow on Sunday for another edition of the Ice Guys presented by the Hockey Podcast